Elders getting abandoned. Now, for all my South Asian listeners, for all my Asian listeners in general, actually, you'll kind of understand this. Now, I'll speak a little bit more on the Indian side of the house because that is what data I have. But in Indian culture, it is quite popular for the kids to take on the responsibilities of the parents. Now, that doesn't just include taking on the mortgage, taking on the bills, taking on, tasks. It includes taking on the task of the parents. They get to a certain age. Hey, you know what? You move in with me. You move in with me, and then we'll have this kind of system going. I'll take care of your prescriptions. I'll take you to your doctor appointments, all that stuff. Or there's an idea of you never leave the house. Oftentimes, this is for the male in the family, right? You get married, the female that you're getting married leaves their house, getting married to leaves their house and comes over to your house. So now it is you, your wife, still in your parents' house. The understanding is when they pass away, when they get old, whatever, the house will be yours. Everything that is theirs will be yours, right? They're not kind of just doing this to do this so then you can serve them and you're left with nothing. The idea is, hey, take care of us for as long as you can, or I guess as long as possible. And, we'll do stuff in return, right? We'll cook. Can't clean much, but we'll try to give something back. Now, I don't hate the mindset, right? I don't hate the mindset of parents living with the generation after them. I personally don't want that, but I am not against it. I think you do need space, but there's still an idea of, I like the validity in it. I've always been someone that worships my parents, right? I've never been big into religion. I've never been, oh, thank God for this. I've always been, I have certain things in life because of my parents or because of family in general, right? They have made certain sacrifices. They have done this and that. They've taken out loans. They've moved to a different country. They've moved, they've taken on debt, whatever it is, where they've taken on these sacrifices and sacrificed their own time for my betterment. That is who I've always been grateful to. Now, there's a certain amount that can get pushed. Going back to this story, where there's this generation of parents getting abandoned by their kids. Now, I found this quite interesting because I don't think this will happen for my generation, right? Obviously, there's time to find out. But as far as that generation before me, right? My parents' relationship to their parents. And from what I've just seen, right? All of my takes are not just based on what happens in my family. It's just what I've seen in general. I think things evolved at a much higher rate and for the better. There is a different level of respect desired. There's a different level of kind of like, you can't talk to me like that. You can't do that to me. I won't serve you. I won't do this. So my parents were part of that class of class of Indians, immigrants that came over to America. Now the system was, hey, you go over to that country, make a name for yourself, figure it out, make some money, have some kids, have those kids become doctors, and you'll be good. You'll be set for life. And the system does work. The system does work. That, like, I understand, the social pressure, they should be able to be whatever they want. Shut up. Seriously. If you aim them towards the doctor, path of life, and they fail and become something else, right? Maybe they're not making as much as a doctor, but you still steered them in the correct direction where education needs to be your kind of main point of view. That's also all they knew. All of this stuff didn't exist, right? I didn't know that you could buy out a bunch of real estate, or I didn't know you could build out a YouTube channel. I didn't know you could go to the NBA, right? The arts, all of that stuff, that's new. So for that first generation of Americans to come over here and say, hey, you know what? I need my kids to be so focused on education. and I'm going to push them to a certain degree. And that maybe kind of builds up resentment. Maybe that builds up some, whatever the feeling is towards that. Now you kind of add on this layer of their parents, right? That first generation of Americans have their mission. They send their kids, or they're having kids. They're trying to send them to college so then they can be better off in life. And then by that time, they'll also probably be good, right? They'll be able to pay off their house. They'll have cars paid off. More than likely, they'll be able to pay for hospice care and whatnot when they get to that age. The generation before them, right? The generation that never left India or whatever country. There's a certain level of things just never evolved. Things just never evolved for them. And they come over with this mindset of, hey, you still need to serve me. You still need to do these obligations, whether it's religious, whether it's cultural, that they expect out of their kids, right? Hey, you need to do the dishes. Hey, you need to take me to my doctor's appointments. You need to do this for me because I am your parent. Now, it'd be one thing if that was the setup and there was, like a mutual respect, love, and connection there. But I think what has kind of fallen through the cracks is this idea of you have to serve me no matter what, right? It is servitude at the end of the day. It sounds negative to me, and maybe it's not to the broader audience, but it is servitude. And it's not crazy, but it's wild that can exist with no type of appreciation, right? There can still exist this mental abuse. Maybe it's physical abuse where they're hitting their kids and the kids are 45 years old, 50 years old. Look, I'm teetering around all of this to say, I think that generation that didn't leave America, that had their kids leave, or maybe it's just this generation in general, I think they just fucked around and found out. Truly, I think they just found out the hard way. In this era that has gotten much softer, much more affectionate, in touch with their emotions. Oh, you know what? Maybe I don't have to get spoken to like that. Oh, maybe I don't have to do that job. Maybe I don't have to serve my husband every night. I don't have to make them dinner. I don't have to be a stay-at-home wife. I can have power myself. Now, there's a lot of saltiness that can probably come from your parents and their parents, where they're like, what the hell is this? You can have a job. You can do this. You can wear that. You can drink alcohol. You can eat meat. Well, you're a horrible person. You're definitely going to hell. Whatever the correlation is, you're a horrible person. You should repent. You should go to the temple. You need to pray for forgiveness. You need to fast. There's so much just shit and jealousy, saltiness, where they're watching this generation that I was able to come have a fulfilling life for themselves. Sure, they had an arranged marriage, whatever it is. And then that saltiness just leads to so much resentment, right? You start talking to your kids a certain way, or talking to your kids a certain way. You start being a little bit more disrespectful. You start demanding a certain thing. Your whatever your bills and stuff. You lose this idea of, let me treat this kid like an adult that they are now. Instead, I want them to serve me. I want them to do this for me. I want them to be happy at the same time. And that doesn't exist, right? That doesn't exist. So then seeing this story where there's this, it's becoming more and more popular of abandoning that older generation, right? These new era people, and I'm not even talking about the people that have moved to America, right? This is just Indians in general. I think this article is just focused on India, where they're tired of this shit. Hey, you know what? You're not going to do that to me. I'm not going to keep taking care of you like this. I'm not going to continuously be bound by the shit that you're going to say to me on a daily, the shit that you're going to do to me on a daily, I am going to find a way to put you somewhere else. Now, oftentimes that looks like, let's say, a retirement home, or, just some different house. Maybe I'll get them some apartment, whatever it is. I'm going to isolate them out of my life. So then, sure, I'll go pick up their prescriptions. I'll take them to their weekly dentist appointment, but I don't have to have them in my life at a constant day to day. And every single day we just get into these constant fights, right? There's only so much time that you should be spending with anyone in your life, whether that's your partner, whether that's your kids, whether that's your parents, even your friends. You got to separate and then come back together, but you got to separate. There's this just resentment that builds up over time. So the alternative may look like something of that nature, right? Some type of isolation. What happens a lot is that generation that comes over, I keep confusing myself with this generation to generation. So what I'm just going to keep on saying is the parents that have kind of abused their powers a bit too much. I think what they then come to find out is they don't really have anything, right? They didn't build up the most wealth. They operated in a particular way and they made certain decisions in life. What skills do they have? Or is it just a matter of, hey, you know what? Because I took care of my parents at a certain age, I can then become that. But the ideology and just the almost humanity behind it has evolved, where that doesn't exist anymore. You can't continue the same actions from generation to generation. And I think this generation has taken a bigger jump. Maybe it's Western influence. Maybe it's just the world influence, right? Hey, maybe we should just lay off the hate a little bit. Things have gotten worse. Things have also gotten better. I understand. Now let's talk a little bit about my point of view. I'm obviously second generation. My dad's parents live in London. My mom's mom did not live with us for the most part. Well, actually, that's probably a lie. She has lived with us for the most part. Now, when that bickering happens, right? What's the alternative? What can you do? You have a daughter that has this obligation where she wants to be a good daughter, right? On paper, a good daughter. I took care of my parents. I took care of my mom. I did this. I did that. And, I saw it all the way through. Salute. But then at the same time, these are your years. You completed the mission. And this is what I tell my mom over and over again, where it's like, you completed the mission. You had kids. You raised them to be successful. Sure, one of them's unemployed right now, but the other one's a doctor. You did good. 50% hit rate. That's amazing. But you completed the mission. So now enjoy this time, right? All those years that you spent pinching pennies, buying us Eggo waffles and yourself just eating butter and toast. Go do what you want to do. Don't be bogged down by the responsibilities of your mom being under the same roof or certain expectations she has, right? Go live the life that you want to live. But it's tough. It's tough, and I understand, right? I'm not in those shoes. Now you add on the layer of how much disrespect girls get over guys. In Indian culture, and I'm talking about the servitude. It is not oftentimes, let's stop trying to be political about it. It falls on the lady. Oh, the girl needs to do this. The girl needs to do this. The girl needs to do this and that. Man is king. Man is king. Now, obviously, like I said, with the generational jump, we've made that kind of shift where it's like, oh, actually, you know what? The guy can cook. The guy can cook for himself. He can clean for himself. The lady, if she wants to go get a job, go get a job. Go do whatever you want. There's this freedom now that it existed before, but it was frowned upon. So now you have this kind of weird conundrum where, let's say my mom will say something to her mom, and her mom just won't listen. No, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. Now, if a guy were to say it to her, right? Oh, she might be a little bit more receptive to it. She's just part of a different generation. I'm talking about my grandma here. Now, I understand it, right? I'm not saying it's correct, but I understand. I love old people. I do love old people. As scarred and as mean as they might be, I do love them. Because it's like that. I will never understand that generation. I will never understand what you went through, how you went through it, what you had to deal with. I personally think I have a very easy life. There are some tough things, right? A bunch of shit that it's almost like an overflow of shit you got to do nowadays. But I still have an appreciation for that generation. Going back to how do you deal with that, right? You're trying to be a good daughter on paper, but at the same time, you want to live your life. Bro, my mom won't even drink alcohol in front of her mom because she just doesn't want that look, right? She's not going to say anything, but she doesn't even want that look where it's like, I'm frowning upon you for this. You are not being the on paper good daughter. You get stuck in this cycle. And at the same time, your life is literally passing you by. But what do? Right? She doesn't have her own house. She doesn't have other people that'll take her in. We don't want to afford an apartment because then it'll just be more work. Oh, the faucet broke. Oh, this light bulb's out. Oh, this, right? You almost stack the problems on top of that by thinking you're solving one of them. And then you just have this mental marathon day to day, like I said, where it's like every single day, right? My mom doesn't work right now. She's at the house. She's found this new life in taking care of her grandkids. But other than that, she's at the house. My grandma's at the house. So the bickering happens way often than not. But what do? There's no space that you can get. You think, oh, okay, I can solve this by putting them over here. But then you're just taping up one problem to create a handful of more problems. And I understand, I'm speaking from my perspective, but I do think it's a very common thing that we've been seeing from this generation that has had more freedom, right? There's this jealousy and resentment that I have seen grandparents that have dealt with it good, right? Very nice grandparents where they're much more receptive. They are receptive to the change. And I see that in my parents where it's like, hey, I understand you want to make certain changes in your life. You want to do this and that. You want to move to California. That's awesome. You know, I obviously have a stance of I would like you here, right? My parents didn't want me to move. I would like you here, but if you want to do that, then you should explore that. My grandma, oh my gosh, hell fell upon my mom, right? She won't say it to me because man is king. But she got an earful and my mom had my back where it's like, hey, when you were young, you did this and that. You moved from city. You exercised the same power that he exercised when you were a kid by being a rebel back then. Now it's much more common, right? I could have moved to a different country. I could have done whatever I wanted to do. And now with this kind of softer generation, right? My parents, I'm seeing as the softer generation than their parents. The openness to taking care of them is there because it's not expected of you, right? You're more open to, taking over certain bills. Maybe you want to buy them a house. Maybe you want to buy them a car. You want to bring them into your house if you have the mental fortitude, if you and your partner agree on it. where it's like, you know what? I do want to take care of you to the best of my ability. When you are starting to have a tough time getting around, walking, figuring shit out, whether it's bills, how to get a doctor's appointment in this era of technology, I get it. It's hard to keep up with this shit. But because that expectations isn't there, it's like, oh, you know what? I'm down to do this. Because of what you gave to me, I want to try to give it back to you, obviously to some extent, right? I want to start my own life. I want to have kids. I want to do this and that. I want to start going down that road myself.